Welcome everybody to the 6th episode of Unpacking Software from Chocolatey Software. On the third Thursday of every month at 4 p.m. UTC, you can find us here on this live stream, chatting about the latest news and opinion on the world of software, focusing on packaging, software deployment and lifecycle management. We also make this available very soon after the live stream as a podcast, and you may be listening to us right now on that. We have another live stream on the first Thursday of each month, and that's called Product Spotlight. And this is where we spotlight chocolatey products, discuss releases, highlight features, and walk through tutorials and demos. To ensure you get notified of all the great content from Chocolatey Software, please make sure you subscribe to us join us on our community hub on Discord. Subscribe to us on various different social media channels such as YouTube. Follow us on Twitter or X, Mastodon, LinkedIn, Facebook, Blue Sky, and Twitch. You can find all those links on our homepage, chocolatey.org. Just scroll all the way down to the bottom and you'll find the links there, or you can find it in the description wherever you found this content. We want to make sure that you hear from us. We hear from you about the content that we're producing. Is it what you want to hear? Do you have any ideas about what you'd like to see? Have your say at ch0.co/stream survey, or again, you can find that link in the description of wherever you found this content. It's also on stream there as well if you're watching us on that. So my name is Paul Broadwith, and I'm the I can't speak today. I am the technical engineering manager here at Chocolatey Software, and today I'm joined by two guests, both of whom James, you've been on before, but Josh, I don't think you've been on before. So just want to introduce our senior solutions engineer, James Ruskin, and our senior construction operations engineer, Josh King. So without further ado, we've got lots to talk about today. Let's look at some of the news in the world of software. And I want to start with PowerShell Pro Tools. So that's no longer going to be a paid and supported product. It's actually going to be open source. Josh, I know that you've recommended this to a lot of people in the past. What do you think about Adam Driscoll actually open sourcing this and removing the support and maintenance from October next year?
I think it's sort of the end of an era. It's been a tool that's been out for a long time. And as you said, I've recommended it to a lot of people over the years. But I guess over those years, the unique features that it have sort of become available in other tools and natively and more modern editors and stuff over time. And as Adam pointed out in the blog post that he released about it, his company's revenue share from selling this tool has dropped significantly as compared to his other software venture, PowerShell Universal. So, yeah, I guess at the end of the day, it just made sense to focus development effort on where the company's making money. And I think releasing it as open source and allowing the community to pick up the ability to keep enhancing it if they need to is the right way to go about it, rather than just taking it away.
Yeah, it's a really cool move.
Letting it die off. I think it's the right move.
Yeah. I think that one of the other interesting things there is that PowerShell Universal, taking it from Universal Dashboard onwards, I've probably just got that in the wrong order. I'm sorry. They have been community extensible for the whole time. It's going to be really interesting to see PowerShell tools go on to be the same way.
Yeah.
You mentioned about the revenue drop. It went from 100% of Iron Man Software's revenue to just 15% now. And that kind of makes sense from what you said, that the tool has become, I don't want to use the term less relevant, but less, things have moved on. I think maybe the tool hasn't moved with it. But this gives the community an opportunity to bring that tool back to being more useful again, and maybe opening up to a wider audience for people. So.
Yeah. I want to believe that PowerShell Universal's income has just shot up so high that it's taken a cut. That's my belief internally.
Yeah.
That's well. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So we didn't mention the dates on that. So current support is going to continue through until the 1st of October 2025. You'll not be able to buy or renew licenses from the 1st of October this year, 2024. And it will be open sourced sometime between now and October 2024. So that's the timeline we're looking at the moment.
Yeah, so not too far away. We're 18th of July just now, so a couple of months we're looking at before that's probably going to be open source. So plenty of time for everybody to get ready to add all those awesome features that they always wanted to see added in there. Cool. All right. What are the other things? Josh, we're going to come back to you again as well. Is that you recently gave? Sorry, let me say that again. You were recently delivering the Back to Basics live stream that we had. I think it was at the 4th last month. No, the beginning of this month. Sorry, 4th of July.
This month, yes. Yep.
Yeah. And what we normally do with the Back to Basics sort of live streams, and we've had a few of them. I think we've had 4, maybe 5 at this point. And what we normally do is there's a blog post afterwards just to kind of give people who want to read rather than just sit and watch a YouTube video in this case. And we try and cover all the avenues where people learn what's best for them. But you were involved in that live stream and wrote the blog post on that. So basically, I'm going to turn it over to you. Can you tell us more about what Back to Basics was and what the actual live stream that you did was all about?
Yeah. So I guess this would be the second Back to Basics live stream I did, which also was sort of a live coding live stream at the same time. The first one was all the way back in March, where we went over creating Chocolatey packages in general and a little bit of what a package is and what the life cycle of a package and all that sort of stuff is. And of course, blog posts written about that back in March as well. And then in July, and James joined me on that one as well, we went the next step beyond just creating a Chocolatey package, which was, well, how do we keep that up to date without having to manually update it all the time as a maintainer? So we looked at how we can hook up automation to go, okay, software's been updated, now I need to update my package. And the tools you can use for that. And then I think we, on the live stream, talked a little bit then as well about, again, expanded on the life cycle of the package, including potentially how the package becomes trusted on the community repository. I'm not sure offhand if that made it into the blog post, but we certainly talked about it on the live stream. And yeah, it was awesome to be involved in that.
Yeah, it was a good time. Hopefully I wasn't too distractingly silly. I always have to hope.
You were me for that one, James.
I was.
How did that feel?
A lot of responsibility, Paul. It was. I don't think I could do it again.
No, it's a lot of work for me being me every day, so I can only feel the pain of others trying to be me. And one of the other blog posts that we put out this month, in case you're not aware, you're watching, you're not aware, we were at PowerShell Summit earlier on this year. It was April. Myself, James, and Josh attended that, and other members of the Chocolatey team as well. And we were also at PowerShell Conference EU back in June. That feels such a long time ago, but it's actually not that long ago. We were there as well, and just myself and James that were there, and some community members as well were there. But Josh, you put out a blog post just kind of recapping all the Chocolatey related talks and presentations that were given during that as well. Do you want to? I'm just going to turn it over to all of us and just what did you think of PowerShell Summit? That being there, attending, talking, and meeting up with everybody that was there.
I'll let James go first this time.
Sure. I had a brilliant time. Obviously had a talk to do, stressed a lot about that. Don't go watch it. I am very unconfident about it. but had a lovely time. Really enjoyed the idea. All the content that I saw was phenomenal, and of course, a lot of the videos are out now, so that's brilliant as well. The PowerShell community is so welcoming and lovely. Spent a lot of time just hanging out with people that I hadn't seen, that I hadn't met before or had met before, and just had a wonderful time. The awkward thing's going to be in a second when I say roughly the same thing about BSConf EU. Over to you, Josh.
I have, what am I trying to say? The PowerShell and DevOps Summit was my first big tech conference, and the first conference that I ever spoke at back in, I'm not even going to try and remember the year, a couple of years back. But so I've got a soft spot for the summit in general. But this year was great. It was good to see numbers starting to come back after 2020 and going remote and all that sort of stuff. And yeah, I did a talk as well. I think a bunch of us also, when I say us, I mean Chocolatey staff that were there. We also did a couple of presentations for what they call the on-ramp track, which is those talks aren't recorded, and they're specifically for helping people get into the IT industry. They give scholarships for that track as well. So that was nice to be able to donate some time to speak to those guys and help make connections on that. I think all up from Chocolatey staff that were there, we did a total of 7 recorded talks, which was, I think, quite a hefty number. And yeah, the blog post covers, well, links to all of those. So if you want to see what we got up to, definitely check out that blog post.
You got some good feedback after that as well, Josh, didn't you? You got some feedback recently. Talks.
Yes. Yeah, it's always nice to know that your talks are landing with people. So feedback at the conference, always nice, but then getting feedback, say, yeah, as Paul mentioned, I got a random DM on Twitter from someone thanking me for the talk this year. So yeah, it's awesome.
I think, like others, I did 2 talks there as well. One of the talks was a complete and utter disaster from a technical side. The slides went strange. The resolution on the projector went funny. It was starting to wavy lines. But and I've said this, and I've said it to everybody, and I'll say it again. It was actually the best talk I've ever given. We all had really good. It was a really good interaction. We all had good fun there. And the best bit about it is, if you weren't there, you would never know, because the AV people afterwards fixed it all up and made it all look beautiful. So the talk, as I said, you'll hear me talking about things and probably think, what is he talking about? Because I'm referring to stuff that you can no longer see on the video. But I think, as you said, James, as well, the community is great. They're really welcoming. I spent a lot of time, I'll be honest, working on my slides. But when I wasn't, spending time with some of the PowerShell community people was great. I really enjoyed that. We went out and got ramen as well. That's really important to me, because we did that in PowerShell conference EU as well. We went away to Antwerp. We grabbed ramen there as well. We like to do ramen things. So it was good. It was fun. And I really enjoyed meeting some of the team that I'd never met before. I hadn't met Ryan before, for example, or Tyler. I hadn't met Tyler before either, or Corey. Actually, yeah, was there any more that I had met?
There you go.
Yeah, so I'd met the Chocolate team members that have been around for a long time. Obviously, they're based in the US and also in Canada. So I hadn't had an opportunity to actually meet them. So it was great to actually meet those guys as well. So yeah, I had a really good time. really enjoyed it. And as I kind of mentioned as well, James, we were at PowerShell Conference EU just a month ago. Again, different PowerShell community. Well, there's some people kind of across over there, but it's a kind of European, obviously a European event, so it's a European PowerShell community predominantly. But again, you have the crossover, and I had really good time there as well. I didn't give any talks. I was on the booth, the Chocolatey booth for that, but you did give some talks, James. So how did that go?
Oh, well, again, I had a really good time. I'm just going to, sorry, just because I forgot to say this, but I just want to give a quick shout out to the PowerShell DevOps Summit organizers, who also did a phenomenal job of organizing everything and making it all excellent. And to make it even more awkward, I'm now going to say the same thing about BSConf EU, where everybody, I think it came off really well. This year we were in, don't say Prague, we were in
Antwerp.
Antwerp, thank you very much. And yeah, it was lovely. The area was beautiful. I went on a lovely bike ride, which might not sound like the sort of thing you're going to do at a tech conference, but was just a lovely time. And it was great to get to know people on a bike, of all things. Had some great talks, saw some great talks, had a lovely time on the stand chatting to random people about random things, gave out some business cards, and have actually got some emails. Shout out to everybody who's emailed me since then. With random chat about Chocolatey AU and other such things. Just overall a wonderful time. And hopefully people enjoyed meeting us and chatting about Chocolatey and stuff as much as we enjoyed chatting to them.
Yeah, we did get a lot of good conversations. Not all about chocolatey things, but predominantly that. And it was really interesting. Speak to different people from different parts of Europe about how they're using Chocolatey and how they're using PowerShell as well. That was really interesting. And Antwerp is a beautiful place. I've never been to Antwerp, but yeah, that was a phenomenal location. That it was, because it was just surrounded by, about within stone throwing distance. There was a half dozen maybe different places to eat, and it was all pedestrian. It was great. So yeah, really enjoyed that. So yeah, hopefully next year we'll be able to give some more talks at both of those events. And if you have attended these events this year, it was great to potentially meet you if we did. If not, we'll maybe see you next year if you're going to be there as well. So yeah. Okay, so yeah, let's move on. So we're going to just do a little part on open source news. I like to put this in here every month because I think it's really important. Chocolatey has a real foundation in the open source community, and we really support our open source product. We think it's one of the fundamentals of the Chocolatey ecosystem. So it's good to actually talk about that, because a lot of the team as well are involved in various different open source projects and open source areas that are outside of Chocolatey as well. So we've got one here, and I was going to say it's one that's close to my heart. That's not. It's one that I've kind of experienced a little bit, and it's the dev rejects CVE severity and makes his GitHub repo read-only. And this is really about the Node IP project developer Fedner Indutney. I hope I'm saying your name correctly. Archived the project's GitHub repository, made it read-only due to a CVE report filed against his project that he disputed. He believed the reported vulnerability, it was actually dubious, the dubious security impact, that doesn't constitute a real vulnerability. But part of the way this was spun off is that this is actually becoming a real problem for open source maintainers, in that they are getting a lot of fake and bogus, I say a lot, they're getting some fake and bogus CVE reports that are then disputed because there's no real open world vulnerabilities or scenarios that are being able to exploit these bugs, actually, as they turn out to be, that are being reported, and it's causing a lot of burnout from open source maintainers. There was a YouTuber whose name I've forgotten. Corey, I'm sure, will jump in and let us know. DHoS, distributed harassment of service, is what they've said. So people are able to harass open source maintainers now through submitting fake and bogus CVEs, and I think it is a real problem. James, I'll come to you first. What are your thoughts on this, and do you feel sorry for the maintainer who's having to deal with this?
I think there's a lot of interesting things here. Like I agree that there is generally there does seem to be kind of a real uptick in, should we say, minor or over enthusiastic? I think I'd say rather than bogus, maybe just my view on it. reports on things that maybe aren't as serious as they are reported to be. I did think that there was an interesting response by some GitHub Security Council employees to this issue, basically around the idea that they've got a blog post that basically says, hey, actually, we think, I think it's titled something along the lines of destigmatizing CVEs. And it's based around the idea that actually you shouldn't be terribly worried if CVEs are being reported about your product because, or, a product that you're using, because they're not necessarily bad. They're not necessarily exploitable, as you say. I think the main problem with this is that though GitHub might be saying this, companies aren't viewing it like that, which means that, despite this lovely blog post, there's a lot of people who will put a lot of value in, hey, you've got a CVE and it's got a big number attached to that, so we should worry about using your thing. It's also interesting, it's actually really nice. GitHub have a private vulnerability reporting feature that was also in this response, or one of the responses. And I think the maintainer of this one has actually unarchived his repo after enabling that. So now potentially in the future, people will be able to privately report this stuff. That said, I'm not sure it'll help with the problem, because obviously people will go and report CVEs and then they'll go through this entire process and maybe they won't go and report it privately first. So a bit of a mixed bag there. Yeah. I'll also say that
Josh?
Sorry, Josh.
No, go ahead. No, James, you finished.
GitHub also said, or a GitHub Security Council employee, also said that they can't reject a CV on their level, which is the thing that, is causing a lot of this automated reporting, because there's still an existing CVE. But, if we, the thing is that with this particular one, I think it was with a CNE called MITRE, or I think that's how you'd say that. And apparently, according to other commenters and the chap in question here, it's quite hard to get in contact with them to dispute this sort of thing. So, actually getting in contact with them was now impossible. I sort of feel like GitHub, if anyone, has enough heft to maybe go and say, hey, you need to do a better job with this. Otherwise, we're going to start devaluing your stuff when you come to us. And we're going to start saying, hey, but this is a weird soapbox to be standing on. And I'm pretty sure I'm being a little bit naive about it when I say that. So, sorry. Mild rant over.
With my turn in a second. Josh?
I think part of what made this particular example blow up is the CVE was originally released with a severity of critical, if I remember correctly. So it got people's attention. Because and being a node project, I believe if you did ran an audit, it would flag it there as well, which then meant a lot of people were getting, because it's a very popular project, a lot of people were seeing it in their audit output, which means a lot of people were opening up issues, which just, it's that distributed harassment thing that you were mentioning, Paul, which I think comes from the Primogen, if I'm remembering correctly.
That's the one. That's correct.
And I think it is becoming more of a problem with people potentially wanting their name against the CVE to help get their foot in the door for security jobs potentially. But it's how you balance that, the potential for, because CVEs are a really important tool, and it's how you balance that against people misusing it, which is an interesting conversation that's happening, and I don't think anyone has the correct answer at the moment for going forward.
What's the silly phrase? Any metric that can be used to measure success will end up being abused.
Never heard that one.
Something along those lines. I think that's generally around using management metrics, but
and I sort of see a parallel here with what started happening with Hacktoberfest and just PRs in general for open source. Is that started off as a really great idea, but then as time went on, as the years went on, people were just opening up tiny PRs to get, or pull requests to get themselves a t-shirt, and just flooding open source projects with almost meaningless busy work for the maintainers to sift through. And of course now Hacktoberfest's answer to that is cracking down on it and also not doing t-shirts anymore.
Yeah. And of course, they did have the thing where something could be rejected if it was useless and just generally not a good contribution. And I think there's no current mechanism for the similar thing.
Maybe that's... maybe having a better pipeline for actually disputing CVEs is a good way to go, but
very hard to balance that.
Yes. Could just go, I don't have any security problems.
Yeah. No, you were wrong every time. Sorry, Paul.
No, I was going to say, having had to deal with one of these in the past, and I do feel sorry for people that have to deal with these things on a daily or weekly basis, because they're just onerous. But having to deal with this in the past, I actually, and this is not going to be a popular opinion, I actually put the blame firmly for all of this in the security community's sort of sector. I think they don't do themselves any favour, the majority of them. I remember the one that we were dealing with security professionals, quote unquote, on Twitter, having a laugh that these things were being reported and how stupid they were. Silly bugs and silly security vulnerabilities that they were. It didn't strike me as kind of, and these are the people that were doing this were well-known security professionals, and it struck me then that I think the security community needed to get its act together. These things are not funny, and these things are causing burnout for open source maintainers because they have a system in place that doesn't work. Maybe it works in a lot of cases, but it doesn't work in all cases, and it's causing problems. It's causing harm to people. This is not funny. This is not a joke. Mm-hmm. These maintainers who are actually removing themselves from projects that are being used in a lot of different areas, projects that are being relied on, not just by other open source projects, but by commercial applications or by governmental organizations, etc., etc. These projects are important in a lot of cases, and maintainers, rather than dealing with the noise that comes out of a process that's not working, they're just throwing the towel in and saying, guys, I can't do this anymore. Yeah. And that there's something wrong when that happens, and people need to stop thinking this is some sort of joke and look at it seriously. Maybe
sorry. I'm with you.
Like, maybe a little bit of a rant again. That's what this is for. This is basically just Paul rant time. But no, sorry, James, on you go.
Every second Thursday, Paul rant time. I think that's what's on the calendar, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Sorry. All I was going to say there was, it is an interesting bug. It is literally, what is it? It's, if you give malformed to my eyes, at least technically it might be valid, a hex IP address to, is it a public IP address? It can return true where it shouldn't, which is interesting, but realistically should never actually happen if the library is being used as the the creator originally thought it should be used. That said, it's, as Josh said a second ago, it's being downloaded 17 million times a week or something bananas like that. Yeah. So there's almost certainly several places where it's being used in ways very different to how the creator actually imagined it initially. So yeah, I think it's a balancing act, but it certainly seemed a little over enthusiastic.
One final thing from me anyway, and I'll put my tinfoil hat on for this one. CVEs there used to only be a small handful of organizations that could issue CVEs. Yeah. And that being NIST and MITRE, I think, was basically it. But now tech companies, there's a couple of tech companies and security vendors that can now issue them as well, which potentially, is there a conflict of interest there where a security company can issue a CVE, but they're also selling products that scan your stuff and say, hey, they're affected by CVEs. So by adding CVEs, they're making their product feeding into their product. And now I'll take off my tinfoil hat and stop that line of thinking.
I know at least one of the links we had this week came from a vendor and was, reporting on an interesting thing. Cool, fair enough. And at the end of it was like, oh, and by the way, our product scans for this thing. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. But, as you say, this is now an advert, essentially. It's an interesting advert with useful information. But I'm sure there are others that carry on with that. Anyway, sorry. Yes.
I think we call that conspiracy. So let's not go down that road. Okay, I mean, let's move on. I think that was an important topic, and I know it's a little bit of a rant there, but I think it's important that we recognise that the work that's done by open source maintainers is important, and they are one person or a small group of people who do this generally in their spare time, and the amount of noise that they get is not fair, I think, in balance with these things. But anyway, I want to talk about something, James, that you just brought in at the very last minute. So we are so cutting edge here that it's just I can't even talk about it. James, just let's talk about GitLab. Talk about the rumors about GitLab.
So how I said just before this call started that you'd say, James, you're on, and I'd say I haven't prepared them. Yeah, anyway, sorry. Yes. So GitLab actually exploring the idea of sale to other companies, and this is, well, it was a surprise to me, if I'm honest. I wasn't expecting this at all. I think people have made note of the fact that Google, or ABC rather, already own a large proportion of them, or a relatively large proportion. And companies such as Datadog were investigating the idea of buying. This is obviously very early stuff, so I don't think we've got much concrete stuff there, but it's certainly interesting. There are lots of companies, including us at Chocolatey, who are using GitLab for source code, for they've got a lot of interesting software. They are a software developer, whatever people may say, Corey, because they're not just shipping GitHub whatever, they're shipping a product with runners of their very own and all sorts, and so they are an interesting company who are potentially being sold. And will that change people's opinion of them, the safety of their data, the safety of their runners, if they can trust the software as a service or software to be run locally? I don't know. Paul, over to you.
Two things I was going to throw out there. Two potential purchasers of GitLab. One, Microsoft.
That would be very interesting.
That would be interesting.
Yeah.
Two, the same company that bought Polyfill.io. Now,
all of my readmes are redirecting.
Yes, but I mean, okay, that might be silly, but think about the potential problems that something like that could cause. Where if you sold, something like GitLab to a nefarious entity, what the potential damage could be is what I'm really trying to say. And we'd think, oh well, that's just silly, but it's already happened. Okay, in a much smaller scale, but the possibility is there. Not that I want to kind of delve into conspiracy theories any more than Josh did. But,
I think the trust thing is really interesting because realistically, why do we trust GitLab above other companies? And I'm not. I guess the answer is because we haven't seen them do bad things with our data. So another company comes in and buys them. Does that reset our trust? Do we know enough about that other company? Have we used them? Can we trust them? And I guess the answer is we're going to have to just find out if they're sold, etc.
And it is very early days. They're exploring. They're not saying that, hey, this is up for sale. They say we're exploring the option. And it is only one article. It's from Reuters. It is only one article, so it could all turn out to be smoke and mirrors and not be true at all. But certainly, it's something to think about. It certainly is something to think about. And that link and all the links and things that we're talking about today will actually be in the description of, it will actually be in a blog post in the description of wherever you find this content. So just go there, you'll find a link to whatever we're talking about today. Okay. So, I mean, we mentioned Polyfill.io. And it's literally the next thing on the list. So the new Chinese, it is. It's like we've planned this. The new Chinese owner of the popular Polyfill JS project injects malware into more than 100,000 sites. Now, I believe there's a kind of later article as well saying that somebody had actually scanned and looking for sites that were still linking to Polyfill, and there was 384,000 websites were still linking to the malicious domain after this had all come out, was all discovered. So I don't know. What do you say about that? James, you've got more to say on this. You are basically a subject matter expert in this particular area, so much so that I think you may actually be secretly working for the new owner of that website.
Absolutely.
Are you?
No, well, I wouldn't tell you if I was, I guess.
Oh, that's very true. That's very
but
true.
if I give you my business card, don't go to the website on it. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, yeah, again, another fascinating thing. This was, I guess, a little while ago now, not too long. But yeah, it's absolutely fascinating to kind of go back and look at what was going on. So, if you're not aware, Polyfill was a JavaScript library that is basically used for for backwards compatibility in older browsers. And arguably, it doesn't need to be used anymore. Most people that you want to support on a website are going to be using something that is up to date, that is using standards that are in scope for current stuff. So, it's arguably not needed anymore in theory. But yeah, back in the day, I think the Financial Times or FT.com had a project that was started by a couple of folk who worked there, or one person who worked there, and then it was worked on by people there. Eventually they left, and Financial Times handed it off to one of them as he left, or something along those lines. As it happens, two of the guys went to Fastly, who then sponsored the project, or sponsored it before that. I'm not entirely sure on that bit. Fastly then stopped sponsoring it in November of last year, I think. And in December of last year, it was transferred to the Polyfill community. And then soon after that, February, I think, it was agreed to be sold along with the domain. So the project and domain both got sold to this Chinese company, Funnel, who most recently have put in a bunch of really dodgy stuff, like redirecting to adult or gambling sites at weird times of day, so it's less detectable. The standard, hey, I'm in a VM, I'm not going to do the stuff right now. Kind of want to put Corey's text on screen there, but I shan't. That's probably not sensible. But yeah, so it's fascinating that it's gone through this path, and I can probably empathize with. I shared a cartoon earlier today that had ways of monetizing open source, and the last one was just, hey, just take it off my hands, man. I don't want to be dealing with this anymore. And I suspect maybe the reason that Fastly stopped sponsoring it in the first place was that it's not relevant anymore. But it really amuses me that now one of the ways to get Polyfill that is trustworthy is a Fastly mirror. That tickles me in a very special way. Yeah. So sorry. Anyway, it's got to be really awkward in offices right there if they're in offices. Those two guys. Just.
And I think it's important to point out as well, or part of what has been pointed out as part of this is that, you've said that even the author of the library has said, look, it's not really relevant anymore. Modern, you don't need it for modern browsers. But yeah, it's still embedded in at least 384,000 websites, and probably a lot more. That was just the ones that were detected.
Yeah, a lot of government websites even.
We're talking about a little bit about that earlier on, about open source projects and being relied on by governments. But at the same time, who takes ownership of this? You've got a website, it's been a government website, potentially it's been up there for 5-10 years. Nobody really maintains it anymore. It's probably just got some information on it that's needed. Nobody's maintaining it because nobody needs to. But yet it's got these vulnerable libraries in there. What do you do? Only takes one of these things maybe it's not a polyfill, maybe it's something else, but it only takes one of these things just to be hacked or in this case, showing adult content or gambling content or whatever to damage a brand, damage a governmental organization, and really just destroy maybe some of the trust that's been built up, for these sites. And it's just purely because somebody wanted to try and monetize it. One of the things that I always think about is, who on earth, if let's say you go on to the site and you get redirected to a gambling site, for example, who on earth is clicking on that link to take them to the real gambling site and then creating an account and for that gambling site to funnel money back? But yet it must be happening or they wouldn't do it. It must pay them money.
Yeah.
So
I was going to pay my parking ticket, but I guess now I'll
Well,
gamble.
yeah.
For
Now I'm
gamble.
I'll play blackjack online for 25 minutes. But yeah, they, if it wasn't making money for them, if they simply would do something else. So it must be making money, which means ultimately, is it us to blame for clicking the links in the first place and going
Yeah.
through the chain?
I found it interesting that one of the mitigations that has happened is, I don't think you mentioned this in the intro to this topic. But if you did, I do apologize. But Google disabled AdSense for the websites that were hosting this this Polyfill thing that was going to potentially do stuff. And arguably, you could say, hey, that's so people take notice. I'm taking away your income. You're going to go fix the thing I'm annoyed about. That sounded much worse when I said it out loud. But yeah, so but the alternative thing there is basically that Google doesn't want to, it's similar to stuff like advertisers on Twitter that don't want to be associated with some things. Google's ads don't want to be accidentally next to or in line with random adult/gambling sites. I think that makes sense, but it's interesting.
Yeah, that was a good point actually, James, about the mitigations that were put in place. So Cloudflare and Namecheap took steps to mitigate the threat, and Cloudflare implemented real-time rewrites. And Namecheap put the domain on hold, and Google did start blocking Google Ads for e-commerce sites that use the compromised Polyfill service, as you mentioned. So that's a good thing to see that this happened, and then the large providers, large players in the market have stepped in and went, no, we need to stop this out, rather than be wrapped in bureaucracy and red tape, as has happened in the past. So it's good to see that people are taking these things seriously and actually putting things in place to stop it being worse than it could have been.
It's slightly terrifying to think of what if the domain had been with somebody who was less open to the idea of that's such a mucky place to be. If you don't disagree with something, this is pretty universally bad. I think we can agree on that. But where does that line end? Tinfoil hats off. Sorry, guys.
And I think it's a good reminder that if you are hosting a website and you're pulling in resources from a domain that you don't control, you don't control that domain. Something upstream could happen.
There were a lot of commenters that were saying, hey, basically you were warned. This was buyer beware. You should have been, well, not internalizing, that's not the phrase here, but you should have been hosting that locally.
Bundling. In this case. And yet it might not even be, next time it might not even be a sale of the project in the domain. It could be, I accidentally let the domain lapse. And now someone else has brought it out from under me. And yeah.
At least with this, there was actually fair warning almost, except no, but...
Yeah, you're using code that lives on someone else's computer that you're not in control of, as you said, Josh. Yeah, that's a kind of fundamental, I think, there for that. Okay, I want to move on because we've got a couple other topics we want to pick up. Actually, we've got quite a few topics we want to pick up. We kind of combine the next two, I think. And it's Windows 11 is now automatically enabling OneDrive folder backup without asking permission. And when Microsoft's Weather app is now showing even more ads than it did before. Josh, you have some thoughts on this one?
I mean, I fundamentally dislike having ads and things that I've paid for, and especially operating systems. And I know technically I haven't paid for the Weather app, but it's the Windows Weather app, and Windows isn't exactly cheap. Well, okay, yes. I see your face there, James. Compared to alternatives. And I get effectively, I think some of the justification for the ads is it's effectively wrapping, the app is effectively wrapping the website from msn.com, if I remember right. but it still doesn't sit right with me. And yeah, it's just another one of those things that have come into Windows 11 that I'm not happy with on a personal level, that I'm not happy with.
I'm increasingly annoyed by every widget that appears that I didn't add or control or are able to take away. And I'm sure some of them you can take away in increasingly elaborate regedit ways for now.
Yeah.
I don't use the weather app in general, or actually Windows 11 much, but I'm mixed on the if it's just the website and the website suddenly got ads. I'm kind of like, well, I guess that's okay, but
I think part of the history here is there was ads in the app.
Okay.
People complained.
Yeah.
They took the ads away, and now they're back, and there's more of them.
Yeah. Is this just kind of as you say, well, sorry, as you saw my face, is this just the way that we see Microsoft is moving away from software sales towards, or software license sales towards alternative monetizations, or?
Yeah, potentially.
Yeah. Doesn't make it feel any better.
No.
Sorry.
I think what concerns me more about these two articles is the bit about without consent. Again, it seems to be happening more and more. I had conversations with people recently where they I don't know how to put this politely. They tried to justify Microsoft's actions based on, well, they were testing the waters, or they didn't know, that people would react this way. And I can't understand how you would imagine that this was done by mistake based on the number of times it's been done in the past. And the same reaction has come out every single time. I actually think a lot of these organizations, and Microsoft's not the only one, what they want to do is weigh us down. Oh, we're just doing this stuff. And the next next topic we're going to talk about, they've done exactly the same thing, where they go and do something, and then they wait to see the reaction from people. And when it's not good, they come out and go, sorry, we didn't. Do you know what? We should have done better here. But how many times should you have done better before this? Before you actually start to think that you're actually doing this deliberately. This is not a mistake. This is deliberate at this point. And if nobody had mentioned anything, you wouldn't have said a thing. You're waiting to see the reaction, and then you're apologizing for the action, but you don't change anything. You then just try and explain why you did what you did. And it's just going to continue to be like that until we accept that it's just actually the norm. And then they'll do something else beyond that. And then the whole thing will just circle back again. I am old and I am a cynic. So, and I'm very jaded about all of this stuff. So that's my take on these things. And I appreciate everybody else likes to be a little bit more polite about it, but I am sick and tired of this happening.
I'm trying to link in some way slowly boiling young versus old frogs. I'm not sure where I'm going with that, so I'm not going to continue. But
those frogs are well boiled, James. It's just they're gone now. But hopefully people can see my point. I mean, I know a little bit of a rant, but hopefully you can see the point that this just keeps happening over and over again. And I think it's because they're just trying to wear us down until we accept these things as normal, because that's just human behavior. That's what human beings do. When things happen all the time, it just becomes normal, and people then don't see it as an exception. They see it as just the normality from then on. Yeah. And I believe that's what's happening here. And as I said, it's not just Microsoft, it's many other organizations as well.
I think you mentioned a second topic there, Paul, and I don't know that we actually introduced it. That other one, yeah. So that other topic there, which I want to talk a little bit about, was now when you do an install of Windows 11, it automatically enables OneDrive to do the folder backups without asking, which I'm on the fence about. And I know personally I lean on don't do that because that's annoying. But I get that for a user that's not me and potentially isn't technical might actually find this really useful to just have it on and not have to think about it. But for me, being a PowerShell person, that also syncs a bunch of PowerShell stuff that doesn't work properly then once it's being synchronized with OneDrive. It starts getting weird. So there's certain folders I don't want synced, and if you're going to turn that on automatically for me, that's a pain.
Yeah.
But also, OneDrive, the free storage isn't all that big. So eventually, these users that potentially don't even know that they're syncing things into OneDrive are going to start getting messages saying, hey, you filled up your OneDrive storage. Give us your credit card for some more storage.
Yeah.
Which is where I think the usefulness borders into
aggressively.
Don't do that.
Yeah. It's also really bold, kind of blows my mind in a way that they just assume that your data is okay to be stored in a cloud. Like
that too.
Obviously, there's a lot of hopeful people out there saying, oh, well, hey, any company that's dealing with data that shouldn't be synced to a cloud probably has an IT department that's configured everything within an inch of its life. But realistically, there are a lot of small companies that don't do that.
Yeah. I haven't looked into it enough to be able to confirm, but I would hope that on enterprise it doesn't turn it on automatically. But
yeah, that's fair.
I haven't confirmed that, so that's just a hope that I have that it doesn't.
I think one of the things that you'd said, Josh, was around, for home users or maybe less experienced users, then turning it on would be a little bit acceptable. I think I would disagree. What if, for example, that everybody in your city, their cars were taken into the garage because they might have problems, and they were being helpful, but none of the cars from the mechanics, they were taken in because they knew what they were doing. How would you feel about that? Would you not feel about, wait a minute, I never asked for this to happen? Do you not think you should inform me about that? I understand you're doing a useful thing for me, but do you not think you should give me the option of you taking all of my data up into the cloud? And while that car analogy is more of, you take my car in, that's fine, but you're talking about your own data. And we know that these companies don't just take your data and they're doing it for your own good. They're doing it because they want to scan your data, and they're invading your privacy because they're going to be taking all of that potentially sensitive information, and they're going to be using it for their own ends, potentially training their language models on it for AI or other types of things to sell you additional products.
Yeah.
I get it might be seen as a useful thing, but that's what I get. Again, I know this is just sound. That's again what a lot of companies do. They make it sound like we're doing you guys a favor. You're not doing us a favor. You're not going to take up your own storage that's costing you money for nothing. You're doing it to make money. That because you're a company and you've got shareholders and that's what you do. There's we understand that that's the nature of the beast. So therefore, you're doing it for your own ends, but you're making it sound like you're doing it for my benefit. You're not doing that.
Yeah.
Again, Grumpy Old Man. Maybe we should change the name of this to Grumpy Old Man. Sorry. James, you were going to say something.
Yeah, I just remembered we're not going to talk about it today. So this isn't a segue into some other topic. But yeah, one of the things and the worst part about this one is that I've actually forgotten which company specifically is doing it. I think it's going to be Google. But there was a company recently that was shown to be essentially scanning all the documents in the online document repository for whoever you are, as private users. They'll scan your things very helpfully so their AI can, talk to you about it. Lovely, except please don't do that without me asking, as you say.
I think I remember reading that, and it was someone getting a summary from the AI of their tax return.
Yeah.
Google does that
with having asked for it.
Google does that with like flights and it'll scan it for you and put it into your calendar. And again, it's useful features that you find you got that. That's actually quite useful, but they're not doing it to be useful. They're doing it because they want the information about the flights that you get on and know what airlines that you use so that they can tailor adverts towards that. That's what they're doing it for. And, Google is an advertising service. So, and there's other companies that do it as well. So, yeah.
User choice. Important.
Yes, very, very, very important. A lot of people will opt into these services and will say, yeah, do you know what? That's really useful for me. But you're allowing people to opt in, so you're getting their consent. Doing it without their consent and then saying it's because we're trying to be helpful, it's actually doing it without their consent, and that is not on.
Yeah, I think I remember opting into the Google Labs at the time thing for Gmail basically saying, "Hey, you got a ticket emailed to you. Do you want me to put that in your calendar?" I think I remember opting into that. That was honestly so long ago that I have not considered it since then, and it's probably 14 years ago. Does that sound right?
Terminators know about you, James. The Terminators know about you. If your name was Sarah Connor, you would be worried, but it's not, so you should be okay.
Yeah.
That's fine. Okay, let's move on to the next topic. And this will be our last topic for today. And it's around pretty much what we've already been talking about. And I'll try not to say very much. But Firefox has become an advertising company. Okay, that's maybe a bit disingenuous. But they now collect user data by default. James, I'm just going to let you talk about this, and I'm going to try very hard not to say anything.
Gosh, okay. Okay, so yeah. What have we got? So Firefox recently pushed an update that had a defaulted to on feature for something termed PPA, or privacy preserving attribution. Privacy preserving attribution. How American do I want to be today? I don't know. And the basic idea there is that it's a new fancy way of doing some anonymized tracking of how well adverts are performing, whether or not people have clicked through, whether or not people have seen them, that sort of thing. It's interesting partially because they push this without any user informing the user, without asking the user. And Firefox is a product that has had several middle modal pop-ups at the very top. When you launch a new version, it's like, hey, I've got this new feature, do you want to enable it? And there's a significant argument to say that they should have done that here. There was a response from the CTO that went through a lot of different interesting stuff. But it's interesting for a variety of reasons. One of which is that Firefox recently acquired not an advertising company, but essentially, as far as I understand it, the company that came up with this concept. And as they say it, this is superior to other tracking methods. It is more anonymized. It's going to a company that isn't dealing directly with advertising. I think it's going to Let's Encrypt and maybe one other. Does that chime well with anybody? But right now, it's just another tracking brick in the wall, without taking away any of the others. So it's weird. I think, Paul, you've got a good rant inside you about this one. But for me right now, I'm giving Mozilla the everybody gets one about this. I've disabled it on mine. I'm actually really... Oh, sorry. The other fun thing was the CTO very much pointed out that they'd been working with Meta to make this good for Meta or good for advertisers. And I see their point. If they don't have buy-in from any advertisers, it's never going to get used. Fair enough. But as somebody who doesn't log into Meta anywhere and somebody who runs a bunch of infrastructure to make sure I don't see an advert if I can help it, something just feels very bad about this. Would anybody else like a rant?
I do have a rant, but I'm not going to do it because I kind of ranted in the last one and it applies here.
Okay.
I know everybody gets one, and I get that, but Mozilla have had quite a few. And this is just another in a long line of mistakes that I feel Mozilla are making. I don't believe Mozilla's heart is in trying to have a privacy protecting browser anymore. I think their heart lies elsewhere, particularly with their financial worries. Potentially, they're trying to make up the shortfall in other areas. But I think again, they could have added this in and said, as you said, a pop up. Hey, we've got this new feature. Do you guys want to, do you want to turn this on? And maybe have a little explanation as to why, advertising's not going anywhere. Let's try and be responsible. Let's give anonymous data. I know it's not what you want. There could have been an explanation there, but they decided to, yet again, like all these other organizations, turn it on by default. And again, that's collecting data without consent. And there is umpteen different precedents for other companies doing this, like we've just talked about. They must have seen this coming. This was not a mistake, and they've done it deliberately. And again, they waited to the backlash, and then the CTO put out a statement saying, "Oh, we've misjudged the situation," which I just do not believe.
Yeah. I also really did not appreciate the way that the CTO framed this as, quote, a temporary prototype in some areas, which obviously necessitated it being deployed to everybody as an on.
So it appears in version 128 of Firefox. So if you're running that, if you're running earlier than that, you won't see that. If you're running later than that, you'll have it in there. I'm not. There's a option in the settings somewhere that you can
Yeah.
actually turn it off. And there was some people saying that when they had a look, it wasn't actually switched on for them. So under some circumstances, maybe it's not getting switched on. But again, I don't know what to say. It was a deliberate move by Mozilla, and it's just one in a long line of mistakes that they seem to be making. And I don't really think they're have the same mission that they had before. And again, I understand, how do you provide a browser for free while trying to make money to pay the developers who are making it? I get all of that. I'm not looking for it to be free.
No.
Maybe it's a subscription model. I would pay money for Firefox.
Yeah.
If you've, but they've also got a very, very small percentage of browser user base. So again, I don't know. Jaded. Jaded.
Yeah.
I was going to say, what would a browser have to do to survive as paid software, either a subscription or a one-off, and have market share, like enough market share to survive?
That's a good question.
Because you see the occasionally interesting, I'll phrase that as interesting. So an example, I guess, would be Kagi, which is a service that you don't see many people charging for, presumably has a relatively small market share, but is, doing interesting work, I guess. And Paul, you use that.
Yeah, I pay for Kagi. I think this is the first year I've paid for it. So for me, it's kind of seen what it's all about. There's some things that they've done in the background I'm not particularly happy with. But we'll see how things are. I think it's October or November or something like that when my subscription is up. I paid for a year's. I don't know if it is a year's subscription but I paid a year's subscription. I found the service interesting. They have a little bit of AI stuff that I kind of use sometimes. Yeah, and the search is pretty good. I don't use Google search. I previously used Startpage. I tried a little bit of DuckDuckGo. But yeah, it's an interesting service. And again, as I said, I would potentially pay for a browser, Firefox. I would pay for that. But I'm probably not going to be. I'll be one of a minority, I think, who would pay for it. And therefore, I understand that Mozilla's not going to rely on mine and a handful of other people's subscriptions. That's just not possible. But still, this isn't the way to go. But anyway, sorry, James, you want to say one last thing before we move on?
If anyone wants to disable that setting, it's settings, privacy and security, website advertising preferences, and then uncheck allow websites to perform privacy preserving ad measurement. That's a mouthful.
We'll add that into the description or into the blog post that the description will link to for this. So we're running a little bit behind time, and that's the last kind of topic we're talking about today. I think today was really interesting. I've ranted far too much, but this is just turning into a Paul rant. I just really think companies. I'm going to stop. But I want to do a couple of honourable mentions of a few things that have come up. Critical Windows licensing bugs, plus 2 others under attack. We'll have the resources for that in the description, all of these. iPhone users in 98 countries warned about spyware by Apple. It's not good if you've got Apple, you've got an iPhone. TeamViewer was hacked as well. Attackers accessed internal corporate IT environments. So they didn't access, if you're using TeamViewer to administer your servers, etc. They didn't hack that part of it. They hacked TeamViewer, the company's internal corporate IT. But again, we'll have the links for that. There, I think there's one article blaming APT29, which is a Russian hacker group, government-sponsored hacker group. There's also a little bit about Signal's desktop apps doing interesting things with encryption keys. If you're using the Signal desktop app, it stores encryption keys in plain text. I think this is a kind of storm in a teacup because it's always done that. Everybody should know all about it. But again, we've got this linked in the description. RockU 2024, nearly 10 billion, that's billion with a B, passwords leaked online. Yeah, okay. And Authy users, if you're using Authy, phone numbers were compromised via Twilio API vulnerability. So that's maybe something that you want to have a look at as well if you're using Authy. Events, Nebraska.code is actually started today. It started yesterday. Chocolatey team will be on site today and tomorrow. So if you want to grab some t-shirts, some stickers, some general swag, I think there's also a giveaway. Please go and see Stevie and Tyler. They'll be there on the booth, and you can find all of the info for that at nebraskacode.amagala.com. So that's today and tomorrow. You'll find Stevie and Tyler on the booth in Lincoln, Nebraska. So that was a lot, and we're 6 minutes over. James, Josh, thank you very much for coming on today. Really appreciate it. Normally we have Stevie and Gary on today, but we thought we'd bring James and Josh on. Stevie's obviously away in Nebraska today, so thank you very much for stepping in. I really, really appreciate it. And to all of you, this is our first season of our live stream, Unpacking Software. So please let us know what you think about this with all of the content we're producing. I'm going to actually pop a link onto the screen that it's there, and it will be in the description for podcast users to complete as well. It should take you 10 seconds. Let us know if this is what you want to see. Is it the right format? Is Paul ranting too much? Is Paul not ranting enough? That's an interesting question. Do you have any ideas of what else you'd like to see? Have your say at ch0.co/stream survey. And as I said, the link is on screen at the moment and will be in the description. To ensure you're notified of all the great content from Chocolatey Software, ensure you join our community hub and Discord. Subscribe to us on YouTube or follow us on Twitter or X, Mastodon, LinkedIn, Facebook, Blue Sky, and Twitch. We're on all the things, and you can find those details at chocolatey.org. Scroll all the way down to the bottom, or you'll also find it in the description wherever you found this content. Join our next live stream on Twitch or YouTube on Thursday, the 1st of August, where we'll be going back to basics again to look at Chocolatey Central Management. If you've ever wanted to know what CCM is, which is Chocolatey Central Management, is how it works and what it can do for you, this is a live stream for you to join. We hope to see you there, the same bat time and the same bat channel. Take care. Bye-bye.